Number 1.
I was contacted by the family of Darlene Polizzi, who disappeared from Lodi, New Jersey, April 24, 1967. She's been missing for 53 years. Her family hasn't forgotten her. Darlene Polizzi was a young woman, just 19, when she went missing from Lodi in Bergen County, New Jersey, April 24, 1967. Her nieces called her Aunt DD. Darlene has reddish-brown hair and brown eyes, a small female at 5'3" and weighing 100 pounds. She was wearing a brown blouse and a skirt with polka dots, along with a brown suede coat with a fur collar, when she went missing. She and her husband were looking at new apartments with her husband and had returned home to Westminster Place in Lodi, New Jersey. Her husband went out, leaving Darlene home alone. She was reported missing by her husband on April 25, and he believed she took several items of clothing but left behind most personal belongings, including her jewelry. She was a waitress at the Hangar restaurant in Paramus and known to frequent Tommy's Diner on Patterson Avenue in Wallington. There is some belief that Darlene might have been the victim of a serial killer. Raymond Alves worked with Darlene's husband at a sheet metal plant, and Darlene was friends with Alves's wife. Some of the suspicion came about due to the highly suspicious move of the Alves family the day after Polizzi disappeared. Alves was convicted of raping a teenager in Fair Lawn and pushing another teenage girl off a bridge in Clifton in 1976. He served 23 years of a 47-year sentence and was released from prison in 2000. Authorities suspected that the murders of 7 teenage females whose bodies were found in Bergen County, New Jersey, might be laid at his doorstep, that he might be a serial killer. He has not been charged in these deaths nor in Polizzi's disappearance, but the concern is there. Alves has been a controversial figure after being released without prosecutors being notified. He was locked back up after a nationwide manhunt after his release and being featured on America's Most Wanted. Prosecutors weren't aware that Alves was being let go and never got a chance to seek to have him civilly committed as a sexually violent predator and had the arrest warrant issued. He also failed to comply with Megan's Law to register as a sex offender. The AP reported that he claimed to have raped and killed more than a dozen women. Law enforcement officials also say Alves remains a suspect in the unsolved slayings of 6 young women in Bergen and Passaic counties between 1966 and 1976. Alves has been active in filing suit against the Department of Corrections for mental health treatment for inmates and other relief in New Jersey. I once had a perp who was a serial sex abuse offender, and that is how he spent and is still spending his time in prison, filing federal lawsuits over this and that. There aren't a lot of remaining family members of Darlene Polizzi, but they miss Aunt DD and have continued to look for her and urge that official channels remain open and looking for her. Maybe initially she was just another missing woman and authorities didn't know if she'd been taken or left on her own because the police didn't get a statement from her sister, who had been looking for her. Her sister was 8 months pregnant at the time. The police also did not have DNA until they obtained it from the last surviving sister, who passed last year. One niece wasn't born when her Aunt DD disappeared, but she is among those who still wants to know what happened to her. Was Raymond Alves responsible for her disappearance, or was there another person responsible for her disappearance and the murders of other young women during that time period? If you have any information about Darlene or any of the other young women, now is the time to provide that information.
Number 2.
On the afternoon of January 3, 2011, Kacey Prim told her mother she was going out and left their home in Audubon, Camden County. Prim was 23, and it was normal for her to take walks. So her mother, Tina, didn't question where she was headed. The next day, Kacey still hadn't returned. Around 2:20 p.m., she called her mother and apologized for being out so long. "I'll be home in a little while," Kacey Prim said, according to her mother. Then the call disconnected. Tina Prim, now 63, never heard from her daughter again. "She just disappeared off the face of the earth," Tina Prim said. On Thursday, with 9 years having passed and investigators out of leads, the Prim family pleaded for anyone with clues on Kacey's disappearance to come forward. And they hoped Kacey could hear them. "We love you and we miss you," said her sister, Christy Romano, 38. "And we just want you home." Authorities said a friend of Kacey Prim's last saw her in Philadelphia, in the 5800 block of Arch Street, the day she called her mother. The family members said they don't know why she was there. Kacey Prim grew up in Audubon and was a softball pitcher. She loved watching Remember the Titans and often spent time with her father, who regularly attended her games and fished with her. When he died in March 2006 of Lou Gehrig's disease, Kacey Prim lost her way, family members said. She began using heroin and sometimes traveled to Camden for the drug. Still, she always came home, her sister said. After several years, Kacey Prim cleaned up and enrolled in night college classes to become a physical education teacher. Nothing seemed unusual the day she left home, Tina Prim said. Her daughter told her, "I'll be back." When the call disconnected the next day, Tina Prim realized something was off. "She would never hang up on me," the mother said. The family reported her missing that day. They and friends also put out flyers with Kacey's picture in Audubon and Philadelphia. Her sister posted some in Camden. Camden County Prosecutor's Office Detective Brad Redrow said Thursday that investigators want to give the family closure but need new clues. "We tracked down all the leads we had," he said. The family still has hope. Tina Prim said she often has a dream in which her daughter is reaching out to her from a body of water. She isn't sure what the water means, but the dream allows her to see her daughter's blue eyes and blonde hair. Romano said the family will never stop searching. "I'll never give up," she said. "I'll never stop looking for her."
Number 3.
One of Maria's friends reported her missing on March 22, 1976. She missed a doctor's appointment that same day. Maria's husband, Hernan Reyes, said she had packed her belongings into 2 suitcases and left their house in the 1100 block of Ringwood Avenue in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey on March 19. However, investigators have questioned her physical ability to do that, given her state of health. Her best friend stated she could barely walk unaided, never mind carry 2 suitcases. Maria and Hernan, who had no children, were in the process of a divorce in 1976. Maria had left her husband in 1974 and returned to their native Chile, but went back to the United States in early 1976. Hernan reportedly did not want to care for his wife during her illness or pay her medical bills. He filed for divorce in January 1976, citing their previous separation. Maria contested the divorce, and Hernan amended his filing to include desertion. The divorce was finalized in 1978, 2 years after Maria went missing. Hernan remarried and, in 1981, he sold the home he shared with Maria and moved away. He is now deceased and was never charged in her case, but his second wife is still alive and living in Florida. She was questioned by police and says she knows nothing about Maria's disappearance. In 1989, authorities dug up the patio at Reyes's former residence to look for Maria's body. Some bones were found, but they turned out to be animal bones. Maria has relatives living in Chile, but they have not heard from her since 1976, nor has she re-entered that country since then. Her neighbors describe her as a quiet, almost reclusive woman. Her case remains unsolved.
Number 4.
Rosenthal was last seen on Friday, February 22, 1991, when she left her job at the Elwyn Institute, a care facility for disabled individuals in Media, Pennsylvania. She worked as a behavioral management specialist at the facility. She had moved to New Jersey from Canada to take the job. She is known to have arrived at her apartment at Somerset Towers on Cooper Landing Road in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Her white Honda Prelude was found in the complex parking lot, and the front door of her apartment was found unlocked, and the Sunday newspaper was untouched. There were no indications of a disturbance inside. She has never been heard from again. Authorities initially suspected Rosenthal had left of her own accord. She was having financial problems, had borrowed extensively from relatives, and was about to be evicted. However, her purse, keys, credit cards, identification, and work briefcase were all left behind, and she left her cat alone on her apartment balcony in the winter cold, which is uncharacteristic of her. Her family never thought she left on her own. A neighbor reported hearing a scream and bumping noises coming from Rosenthal's apartment at 3:45 a.m. on Sunday, February 24. 5 hours later, the neighbor heard Rosenthal's sliding glass door open and shut. Police began to look into the theory that she had been abducted and murdered. Charles E. Crazy Eddie Reddish Jr. was a maintenance worker at her apartment complex in 1991. A photo of Reddish is posted with this case summary. In 1995, he had been charged with the axe murder of his girlfriend and the rape of her teenage daughter. He was convicted in 1999. When he was arrested for that crime, he told police he had killed Rosenthal. According to Reddish, he broke into her apartment while she was asleep, planning to simply burglarize it, but Rosenthal woke up and saw him. He beat her and smothered her to death with a pillow so she could not identify her, then stole $80 from her purse and left the residence, leaving the body behind. A few days later he returned, wrapped her body in a bedspread, put it in a shopping cart, and transported it to the trunk of his girlfriend's car. He dumped Rosenthal's corpse in a remote area off Route 130 in Salem County. In 1997, Reddish was charged with Rosenthal's murder. He reached a plea agreement with the prosecution and pleaded guilty to manslaughter. The deal, however, was contingent on Reddish leading the police to Rosenthal's remains. When he refused to accompany authorities to the designated spot to assist them with the search, he was recharged with capital murder, and the case went to trial in 2001. He was convicted and sentenced to death in 2002, but his sentence was commuted to 60 years in prison after the state of New Jersey abolished the death penalty. He remains incarcerated. Foul play is suspected in Rosenthal's case due to the circumstances involved. Her body has never been found.
Number 5.
Nicole was last seen in Brick, New Jersey on March 12, 1995. She left to spend some time with her boyfriend, Louis P. Ursinoli, at his mother's home in Hauppauge, Long Island. She promised to call her parents and let them know if she would be staying overnight, but she didn't call and has never been heard from again. A photo of Ursinoli is posted with this case summary. He and Nicole had been dating for just a few weeks and seemed to have a good relationship. Her parents approved of Ursinoli, and he had dinner with her family. When her father contacted Ursinoli to ask where Nicole was, Ursinoli said he'd taken her to Brooklyn, New York the night of her disappearance, and they had an argument. She got out of his car at 93rd Street and 7th Avenue at 9:30 p.m., carrying her clothes and radio, and he thought she was going to her ex-boyfriend's house. He said he never saw her again and that she left her Mickey Mouse backpack behind at his apartment. Nicole used her backpack as a purse and carried it with her everywhere, and her family didn't think she would have left without taking it. She had dropped out of 10th grade in Brick Township High School the previous fall and decided to become an auto mechanic. A week before her disappearance, she began GED preparation classes at Princeton Avenue School. Her parents described her as mature for her age, but confused and lovesick. Shortly after Nicole's disappearance, Ursinoli was charged with Nicole murder. Authorities believe he beat her to death in his apartment at the Parkside Motel, where he had been living at the time of her disappearance, after she told him she was leaving him because she wanted to reconcile with a previous boyfriend. Police found bloodstains in several places at the apartment, and some of Nicole's clothes were present. There were indications that someone had tried to clean up the crime scene. Ursinoli told his uncle, Bernard Mancuso, he'd hit Nicole in the head 6 or 7 times with a crowbar, slit her throat, wrapped her body in a carpet or garbage bags, drove it to Long Island, New York, and put it in a dumpster there. He fled the area after Nicole's disappearance but was arrested at the airport in Los Angeles, California. Ursinoli subsequently tried to hire someone to kill Mancuso and his wife to stop them from testifying against him. In November 1996, he was convicted of murder, 2 counts of attempted murder and conspiracy, and sentenced to life in prison plus 20 years. He will not be eligible for parole for 40 years. Foul play is suspected in Nicole's disappearance due to the circumstances involved. Investigators believe her body may have been incinerated.
Number 6.
According to Bonita Karen's mother, who is also named Bonita, her daughter was last seen strapped in her stroller on the porch of her family's residence in the Virginia Court Apartments in the 900 block of Baltic Avenue in Atlantic City, New Jersey, at 6 p.m. on September 14, 1986. Bonita Karen was eating a popsicle, and Bonita's other children were playing outside at the time. Bonita claimed that she looked outside at approximately 7 p.m. that evening and discovered Bonita Karen had disappeared from her stroller. Bonita claimed that she searched Baltic Avenue and the surrounding streets for her daughter, but she could not locate her. She reported her daughter is missing at approximately 8:30 p.m. Bonita Karen has never been seen again. Bonita Karen's father, Abdul Salam, was immediately eliminated as a possible suspect in his daughter's case. He had been seeking custody of Bonita Karen at the time she vanished and was imprisoned on a robbery charge. He and Bonita were together for 8 years, and Bonita had 4 children during this time, 2 of whom were Salam's, but she and Salam never legally married. Salam has stated he never believed Bonita's account of their daughter's disappearance. Photos of Bonita and Salam are posted with this case summary. Bonita allegedly abandoned Bonita Karen at birth and also attempted to abandon another newborn after Bonita Karen disappeared. Bonita reportedly walked out of an Atlantic City hospital in 1984 and left Bonita Karen at the facility. She was not charged in that case, but Bonita did face charges when she gave birth to a son in October 1986, 1 month after Bonita Karen was last seen. Bonita checked into Atlantic City Medical Center under the alias Laura Smith to deliver and was discharged on October 7, 1986. Bonita apparently then left with her newborn son and took a cab to an Atlantic City bus terminal. She boarded a bus to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and left the baby lying face down in a terminal restroom in Atlantic City, where he was rescued shortly thereafter. Bonita was sentenced to 9 months in jail for endangering the welfare of a child in January 1987, and her 3 other children were placed in foster homes. She was paroled after 5 months, but served another 15 months when she was arrested for shoplifting baby clothes while on parole. The father of Bonita's newborn son told authorities that she lied to him and said she had an abortion when she was pregnant with the child. He did not know she had carried the baby to term and given birth until he was contacted by law enforcement. Bonita had 3 more sons after the one she abandoned in 1986. The prosecutor in Bonita's case told the court that she was uncooperative during the investigation into Bonita Karen's 1986 disappearance. He stated that she provided false leads and also lied to authorities. Bonita evidently never inquired as to the status of her daughter's case. Salam believes that his daughter was not abducted and has asked investigators to search the yard and back of the Virginia court apartments for human remains. Authorities utilized cadaver-sniffing dogs earlier in the case and could not locate any evidence in the area. Salam also stated that New Jersey's Division of Youth and Family Services, DIFS, was supposed to check on Bonita Karen's well-being prior to her disappearance at his request. DIFS arrived at the Sanders residence only to discover no one was home during their first visit. By the time DIFS prepared for a second attempt to see Bonita Karen, she had vanished. Salam continues to search for his daughter. In 2009, authorities began searching a wooded area in Pleasantville, New Jersey, for Bonita Karen's remains. Reportedly, Bonita's best friend went to police and said Bonita had buried her daughter there. Nothing was recovered at the search site, however, and investigators discontinued their efforts after a week. A forensic anthropologist noted that given Bonita Karen's age and the time that has passed since her disappearance, it's possible that even if her body had been there at one time, there would be no trace of it now. Some law enforcement officials believe that Bonita Karen choked to death on the popsicle stick she was holding on the day of her disappearance and was buried somewhere off the family's residence. There is no evidence to support this theory, however. Bonita Karen's disappearance remains unsolved and is still open. Authorities now believe she was never kidnapped but died on the day she vanished and was buried.
Number 7.
Betty was married to John David Smith III at the time of her 1991 disappearance. The couple met in Betty's native Niceville, Florida in 1990 and married that same year. A photo of John is posted with this case summary. He filed for divorce from Betty in January 1991, but the couple reconciled in May and moved to New Jersey. Betty's family told authorities that John had seemed to be mild-mannered prior to Betty's disappearance, but they later learned he was abusive towards his wife. Betty called her daughter at approximately 8:30 a.m. on October 4, 1991, from the couple's West Windsor Township, New Jersey residence. Betty gave no indication that anything was amiss and did not mention any travel plans. She was recovering from a broken hip at the time, which would have made traveling difficult. Betty has never been seen or heard from again. John told Betty's family that he believed she went on an impromptu trip. Her relatives did not believe this claim and began to investigate her disappearance themselves. They learned that John had previously been married to Janice Hartman Smith from 1970 to 1974, while he initially told Betty's family that their marriage was his first. Janice vanished from Ohio in November 1974, just days after her divorce from John had been finalized. John reported Janice as a missing person 2 days later. Janice's case remained unsolved until 2000. Her photo is posted with this case summary. John was never charged in connection with either of his wives' disappearances in the 1990s and moved to California after Betty vanished. He married for a third time in 1998. Janice's remains were located in an Indiana roadside ditch in 1980, 6 years after she was last seen. Her legs had been cut off below the knees. She was not identified until 2000. John, who had by then moved to California, was charged with aggravated murder in Janice's case in the fall of 2000. His third wife initially supported him, but filed for divorce and a restraining order shortly before his arrest. She learned about John's abusive background and also cited the murder of his first wife and unsolved disappearance of his second spouse. John was found guilty of Janice's murder in 2001. The jury rejected the aggravated murder charge and convicted him of simple murder instead. He was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison and is currently incarcerated in Ohio. Foul play is suspected in Betty's disappearance due to the circumstances involved. John is not charged in her case, but he was found liable for her wrongful death in a civil suit in 2002 and was ordered to pay $1 million to her family. Betty has never been located. It is unlikely that her family will be able to collect on the civil action. The FBI is attempting to identify 2 women pictured in photographs found in John's collection at the time of his 2000 arrest. Investigators would like to ascertain the women's whereabouts, given John's history. Their photos are posted with this case summary.